Love to see it. Spencer, age 25 from Phoenix, and just representing the Phoenix Flames as Phi at 11-3.
Yeah, I think you said as Phi, and there's Arizona is AZ, so then you're
That worked out perfectly.
All over it. Brian Lorenz, 26 years old from Fremont, California, on Icelander, another 11-3 record, and man, oh man, these players have really come to play.
Yeah, it is going to be a match for the ages, both of them trying to cut their way into the top 4, because that top 4 it's going to be something. And there we were for just a moment, just like ships passing in the night. You saw us for a moment in our element. And here we have the matchup. It looks like Spencer has revealed his equipment. He's got the Tide Flippers for a little bit of arcane barrier.
Yeah, wearing them where your hands would typically be. You've got the Tide Flipper gloves, apparently. Like I said, we talk about the meta and the deck building, but how about the placement of the heroes? We saw a hero put their hero to the left slot where you typically the weapon goes. Now we've got all 4 equipment pieces kind of in this sort of block formation, you know, like a phalanx almost, kind of, you know.
I've used the block formation before. You know, sometimes it just gets everything up front and easy to see if you're playing like a webcam game, if you will, you know.
Hey, that's a mounting anger.
That it is. For 4 with the old go again.
Both players pitching to the top of the screen. This is all topsy-turvy here. I think Spencer is trying to gain a psychological advantage here.
Perhaps a left-handed player like myself placing the deck on the left side and just running it out there. Searing Emberblade, and he's going to choose to Arsenal here and pass on over. He's taken 3 cards out of the Icelander's hand. Icelander was able to keep 1 and then draw up at the start of their own turn or at the end of the previous turn, because that's how the game works.
Spencer Freeman is, didn't punch through for damage, so the 36 you see is basically the life penalty that Wizards typically get. They usually start a little lower because the power level can sometimes be so high. Ultimately, though, Phi going to finish that first turn with an Arsenal. Brian Lorenz on Icelander drawing up, and now the fireworks begin. Now it's going to get down and dirty, and we're going to see precisely what Brian Lorenz here is looking to do. In this deck, again, this is more of a traditional Icelander. It's hard to say traditional given the fact that the hero is like 3 months old, but we've seen the evolution of this hero from different, different designs. Michael Hamilton's design, this design. There was Pummel Icelander out there for a little while. Ultimately, this is a little bit more, traditional, we'll say.
Yeah, and this is a traditionally tough matchup. At least in the past couple of weeks, as I've been playing this matchup, and from others that I've talked to, this matchup has started to really move in favor for the Phi player, because they're starting to be able to run like the Belittle Blue package and be able to pay through some of that disruption. And so taking this stance is, Brian, of I'm just going to find a red ice bolt, throw it, try to even our life totals, and just bleed our life totals down together so that I can Storm Striders you hopefully on your turn.
And in this case, again, there's AB1. Tide Flippers offers a little bit of reprieve against the arcane damage. Not a whole lot. Nothing that Icelander can't necessarily handle. But early game, we've seen it time and time again. It's, life is not an issue. It's just there it is.
That's what it is.
Imagination. I was trying to find a word there, Stephen.
It's okay, because we have a Rise from the Ashes play. This is what we were talking about right before the entire match started. And in response to the Rise from the Ashes, we're going to have an Aether Icevein Blue played from the Arsenal. And this is an expensive card, but when you fuse this, it can cause some massive disruption, and it is going to connect for damage, which is going to be disruptive.
Yeah, this is the plays and where Icelander is going to really throw a wrench in the gears of Spencer's plans. The Aether Icevein might only be representing 3 arcane, but the fusion allows it to have an additional effect where if it does connect for arcane, discard or pay 2. And for a hero that likes to go very wide, paying 2 is not always a digestible thing, and discarding cards, if all your cards are red, you're going to have to probably toss something that you like. Ultimately, however, Icelander's plan here is to turn these big turns and nerf them a little bit and poke away and block where you can. In this more traditional Icelander, Stephen, is Brian going to be playing primarily on Spencer's turn here. Do you think that he'll ever get options to sort of toss something on his own turn? Is he just donating 2 or 3 cards to block every single time?
Yeah, I think depending on how this really draws out, because that card is a huge play, because you're forcing 2 more resources to be generated from your opponent. Otherwise, the turn's basically over, because anything that doesn't already have go, or it's just going to lose go again from Blizzard, and you're giving them a frostbite as well. So you're asking the question: do you want to lose go again or pay 2? But to answer your question, overarching, it's a tough matchup for the Icelander, because you do have to commit so many cards to blocking in general if they're going for those crazy long turns, and it means that you can't necessarily keep a card, throw it on your turn, and then set yourself up with an arsenaled card as well. And it looks like this was the perfect sequence of events for Brian to establish something in the arsenal for his own turn, because Spencer basically just said, yep, I'm going to take the frostbite. I'm not going to pay 2. It's going to lose go again. What else do you want to do to me?
6 is still left to be answered for, however. And again, ultimately, and we've seen these matchups, Icelander versus Guardians. The Guardian presents the big attack. Icelander does all of her standard, David Copperfield-esque magic tricks, and David Blaine's some damage in there. And ultimately, however, there is the bell that needs to be answered at the end of the day, which in this case is 6. And, the difference here is that the Guardian is going to present 9, 10 plus, which is really difficult to just absorb.
And this is a big chunk of damage, and I think he's content taking this. In this position, you're okay taking this, because as Icelander, you want to have a card in hand or 2 cards in hand so that you can do something like Coronet Peak or possibly Brain Freeze Fused, rip a card from their hand, and from that point, then arsenal the ice card that you could be blue that you put into the arsenal and then play. And it could be a Brain Freeze Fused or a Coronet Peak.
There it is, the Coronet Peak. Again, it's going to pitch for 3. It's an action. There's no go again off of it. However, what it does is it forces your opponent to basically discard or pay 1.
Yeah, so he ended up discarding, and the Phoenix Flame, the beautiful extended art Marvel Phoenix Flame, moved out to the discard, which actually works out well for him because he can always go recur that later.
I would love a full art Marvel Phoenix Flame. I do not have one. However, should you be at the venue and want to make a trade?
That's right. You could make a trade with us. We would love to trade you for your Phoenix Flame. We have some, many goods. We have many goods in our slowly growing bazaar.
That's a good word for it.
It is. Comes across with the brand with Cinder Claw.
3, go again. That's a good start. Again, when it comes to starting the combat chains, Steve, is this the best opener?
Well, it depends. I think things like Mounting Anger are also very powerful, but anything that basically has the guaranteed go again, you absolutely love. But Brain Freeze here is just perfect because with Brain Freeze Fused, he gets to look at his hand and then just remove one of those cards, again nerfing the turn. And that is the kind of card that you really want to find early and often in this matchup to make this matchup a little bit more comfortable. And Brian is very adept and very able, proving that he knows how this matchup can go for him, trying to execute it to the T. Look at this. He's a 4-card hand. His opponent has a 2-card hand and is about to lose one.
Yeah, there's the Brain Freeze, and again, putting a card of cost 2 or less. That's the red version. The blue version is 0 or less, and there's going to be a lot of those in Phi's hand.
There is, and that 3-card hand becomes a 2-card hand because he forces out the response here from Art of War. He's going to use the Art of War effect to banish draw 2, and then he's going to Brain Freeze. So even after all is said and done, trying to mitigate some of it, you still just lose a card. Sorry about that.
But it's not just about peeling the card. It's also the knowledge. Knowledge is power, Steven.
That's right. Knowledge is power. It's like reading books. It's like what Prism used to do. She had a lot of knowledge, and now look where she is. Living legend.
She is absolutely a living legend. So just knowing and studying the cards, and even if you're peeling 0 cards, knowing what the reach is good for you as the person on the receiving end to know how far this turn can go. So study the hand, build the turn in your mind, and pick the right card to pick out of the hand here. So
what a way to just nerf this Art of War turn, right? This is one of those biggest 3 turns that you could have as a Phi player, to have Art of War and to have basically a full hand. And here, on a single play and a single fuse from a random 0-cost blue from your arsenal, you're looking at their entire hand, forcing them to lose a card.
So opting to go ahead and take out a card, say, all right, put that on top of your hand. And again, it's not necessarily getting rid of the card outright and getting it just like, shredding it or putting it through the paper shredder. It's more so just the fact that this turn now is significantly less potent.
Yeah, that lava burst, if you go wide enough, represents so much damage, and now that lava burst is completely out of play. Yes, you'll draw it next turn, but are you going to draw an Art of War next to it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But now you have to consider, are you just going to toss this turn away, throw a couple of innocuous attacks for 4, and then, just don't set an arsenal? Or are you going to say, I'm not going to push the damage, try to set an arsenal, and hope that I can threaten you again next turn?
Icelander always seems like playing so much on your opponent's turn. It's like that unwanted party guest. Like Icelander shows up to the house party uninvited, doesn't bring a 6-pack to the to the cause, and just starts going through your medicine cabinet and screwing around with your stuff. That's basically how Spencer's trying to throw a party here, and Icelander's starting to go through his DVD collection.
A wrench in the works, as one might say. And considering a block here as well, I mean, it is damage. Like, you do have to understand, Icelander starts at the life deficit of 36 instead of 40, and you have to take into account how much damage you are taking and what you're going to present in turn, because you can do all the disruption in the world, but if they go 4-4-4-4-4, you still just die. So blocking is on the menu, and these Frost Hexes in this matchup don't matter too much. In slower matchups, yes, but here, not so much.
Yeah, those Frost Hexes are high value in particular matchups, like you mentioned, the Guardian matchups, the slower matchups. But when you might not see a turn 4 or 5, they're not ever going to get there. So they're block 3s, I believe. They're very adept in at least keeping your health total healthy. And ultimately, though, the Art of War turn could have been an absolute disaster. Brian Lorenz doing what he could to at least get out of there relatively unscathed.
And look at the life totals. They're basically at parity. And if you're at parity with a wizard on life totals, you might be behind. Because being a wizard, able to play on both turns, being at parity is not necessarily a good thing.
Who's your favorite wizard ever?
Gandalf.
It's pretty good. The
Gandalf.
gray or the white?
I actually like the gray more. I actually very much like the gray
Friend
more.
of the Shire,
Yeah,
you
straight
know.
up. Wonderful fireworks. Read the books, go back. The wonderful fireworks.
All right, there's a Channel Lake Frigid. This is a complete stopgap to a lot of the work that Fi wants to do. When you're taxing every single action off of the Fi player, that can turn a 5 or 6 combat chain into a 3 combat chain, even less. So big work done here by Brian Lorenz.
And this is one of those cards that when at the outset of this matchup, when both of these heroes were released into Classic Constructed, there was this belief that, man, all you've got to do is establish like Channel Lake Frigid and give a Frostbite and make some other disruptive plays and then just start shooting them with the Waning Moon. But because people are including Minnowisms, Belittles, things that can go fetch more resources, and even energy potions, we started to see Fis start to tech against these matchups, and it does look like there's 3 energy potions in this deck. They're teching against these matchups and these disruption effects in ways that are very effective themselves. And so can he pay through this disruption?
And the Fi player, we're talking about energy potions on your turn 0. Very nice to just drop them out there in certain cases, but also, how many times have you seen a Fi player run out of cards with a go again, maintaining an action point? Sometimes having an energy potion to just close out the turn is a nice bookend to a very disruptive turn, or a very destructive turn, rather. And having that in your back pocket, especially against Icelander, is really nice. I'm wondering, we haven't seen an energy potion yet. I'm not sure if they've made the cut in this particular matchup, but you got to suspect that's what they're in there for.
Yeah, I would think so. You play an energy potion in this matchup so that you can pop it in response to something and have some resources at your disposal. He is going to banish, I believe that's the lava burst that he had disrupted out of his hand previously. He's going to have to pay extra, which does really tax him a lot here because that Searing Ember Blade is costly. Got to pay through the tax and the Frostbite as well.
Ember Blade is a 3 go again. Again, it's the token weapon that Fi came to the party with, a very, very potent ninja weapon that really he's the only one who can wield at this moment. We don't know what the feature holds. However, it's such a great weapon, and obviously, when it comes to weapon power rankings, you got to think that Rosetta Thorn is just the GOAT, but I feel like the Searing Emberblade is up there with the likes of like Winter's
Winter's
Wail.
And I bet you if we asked Jacob Ball, he'd say, you know, don't sleep on that Teklo plasma pistol because that thing can shoot for 5.
3 times.
Yeah, we may see that later. Who knows? Nevertheless, that even though that Channel Lake Frigid turn did very much slow it down, that still presented 10 hull damage that was taken by Brian. So at a 10 life deficit,
E-Pot. That's it. Yeah, E-Pot in the hand to Spencer Freeman.
Oh, and this is why he took it, because he sets up a pitch of an ice card, Aether Ice Vein red for 5 that is going to rip a card because it's guaranteed to hit. Not enough Arcane Barrier to stop that arcane damage.
Yeah, you're always on the back foot against 5, but when you have a turn where you can kind of take a little bit of damage to really clap back and nerf the turn, there's no arsenal for Spencer Freeman. It's a 4-card hand that's going to quickly become a 3-card hand.
That's right.
And judging by what's in the hand, I feel like Spencer is not going to I don't think he's going to pitch the energy potion. I would suspect that he's probably going to just maybe dump it on the field and maybe take a turn off, but it's tough to take a turn off against Icelander.
It is. I don't think you can ever really consider a quote-unquote full turn off and not presenting any damage. But we saw Brian take 10 because he makes this play. There are, like you mentioned, very specific times, and he just tosses an Extended Art Flamecall Awakening just away like that. And there are times where, as the Icelander player, you're just full blockout mode. But then there are times where I'm going to take a bunch of damage here because I have an incredibly disruptive play. One of those times is when you have an Aether Ice Vein.
I want to make note over here is the fact that Channel Lake Frigid has been on the board for essentially 2 turns.
Yes.
The beauty of that card is that it only checks the Ice Flow counter at the end of your own turn. So if you cheated out on your opponent's turn with Icelander's ability, you do not have to do the channel check, so you have an entire additional turn to go ahead, pitch an ice card, and keep it on the board. There might be 3 turns where this is in effect and really disrupting Spencer's abilities.
And here, because he had the 3-card hand, and one of those was that E-Pot, he is going to just establish it, and that gives basically all the tempo over to Brian, who's going to play this Cold Snap, give a Frostbite, which doesn't necessarily represent much of anything, but it is also going to draw him a card. Maybe in drawing into something, he could, pitch for. We already has the Waning Moon resources floating, so he's always going to Waning Moon here, but could also even just consider doing some crazy Storm Striders stuff. Generally, you save that until the end if you can and present lethal on their turn. But depending on what he draws, it looks like he's got a nice little setup here to maybe go to his turn, drop an Ice Bolt.
A lot of talk about tempo throughout the entire weekend. You yourself are a music teacher. Tempo is actually a music term as well. If anybody might be not fully understanding what tempo means, maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of an insight in terms of what tempo means in relation to card games.
Yeah, for sure. As far as tempo is concerned in a card game, you can think of it as sort of synonymous with the term momentum. But and especially in Flesh and Blood, tempo is who has control of the flow of the game, and it's very apparent and it's beautiful in Flesh and Blood, because when you're looking at this, here's the presentation of a Command and Conquer, which is going to take 2 cards or force a loss of an arsenal, meaning that the Icelander player is saying, you have to give me cards and slow your own turn down, or you're going to lose and get disrupted. And by the way, he also keeps the channel around. So if we're trying to figure out which of these players has the advantage or the tempo in their favor, it would be the player that has a full hand of cards and some amount of ability to play into a disruption. And that's exactly what we see here with Brian.
Has anyone ever called you the Maestro?
Yes, they did, and it was awkward. Okay. But I just live with it, Sometimes that happens.
If you want me to not call you the Maestro, I won't call you the Maestro.
I think you actually called me the Maestro.
I did. I was wondering if you remember that.
I did.
Okay.
And
Was it awkward?
A little bit awkward.
All right.
Maestro's just a strange term for a guy who teaches music, I don't know.
It would be a strange term for like a construction site foreman, or
it would be, yes.
Or like an electrician. But like,
I don't know. I look at maestros as people who conduct major orchestras. Like who are going to go out into the concert hall and stand up. I get to play music with like 15-year-olds, and so like maestro over here.
Hey, for the record, that's when NSYNC started. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just saying.
Only you would know that at a moment's notice.
Don't even start with
That's
me.
because you are such a fan
Yeah.
of the band NSYNC.
There's so much bandwidth in my head that is dedicated to 90s like horse crap like trivia. It doesn't even matter. That's a sink below. We're going to go ahead and block one of this damage over here. Some of those D-reacts that are in this list for Brian Lorenz. He's got 3 sink belows. He also has 3 sigils of solace that recovers some life, 3 oasis respites as well. So there is some defensive capability in that list.
And I do want to point out that a lot of Icelanders, and Brian here included, have shifted away from the use of Sigil of Permafrost because it costs 1, and because you have to fuse it, and then because you have to jump through the extra hoop of actually dealing arcane damage. There's too many hoops that you have to kind of go through, and pivoting off of that Sigil of Permafrost means you have more room and more ease of playing something that is just straight up good, like Sink Below.
Aether Ice Vein fused. Is that's the yellow one? So it's going to come in for 4 arcane. It does get the fusion. We've seen so many Aether Ice Veins already. We've got basically the full package here, a 9 spot of Aether Ice Veins.
The card is too good. People started this deck off by running the reds and the blues. Some people didn't like the reds very much. They just ran the blues for pitch, but they liked the reds as they played them. And now we're just on all of them because the card is too good. It is worth the damage, worth the disruption. You play all 9.
I had dinner yesterday night with Caleb Van Patten, a.k.a. Majin Bey, and he is so much into Wizard. He was a Kano main, and he was talking about trying some of the side events today, and he was like, do I bring Kano or do I bring Icelander? And there was no other conversation, and I was talking to him about how appealing it is to play a hero like Wizard or Icelander. There's so much to do. I was so into Prism before she hit Living Legend. I loved it because the ability to play within the margins. It's not a very straightforward style of game. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made. There's a lot of player agency in terms of how it works out. And Icelander, to me, I think, is the next hero I really want to dig into. I really want to learn and master because I do believe that the versions of Icelander we see today are not the final form.
Oh, 100%.
I think there's so much runway left for this hero.
Oh, and this is huge. We're going to Storm Striders at this moment. Storm Striders coming across for another Aether Ice Vein. And keep this in mind. Storm Striders is one of those cards in traditional Wizard and Kano before Icelander existed that was only used as the last resort, I'm going to kill you on your turn move. But Icelander doesn't use it that way. Icelander uses it to gain even more tempo or to save your own life. So in this case, you using this to gain even more tempo by fusing and pitching for an Aether Ice Vein yellow, which is going to push 4 damage. It's also going to guarantee a hit, put your opponent to 6 or 7, depending on if they pitch for this, steal a card from their hand. It's going to do it all.
Is this a nightmare matchup for Spencer or any 5 player, frankly? When you're trying to look for the most, uncomfortable matchup you can hope for, is this it?
I don't think so. And that's the interesting thing, because Brian here may be just straight up proving me wrong and proving others wrong that believe that this matchup is starting to become more 5 favored, because the inclusion of all the blues and being able to pay through disruption to just push even more damage is incredibly potent and incredibly powerful. But Brian has found the combination from the beginning of the game to establish and maintain tempo. And it's like watching like a tiger, like play with his food. It's just like, I'm going to freeze you. Yeah, I'm going to stick a Channel Lake Frigid for 3 turns. Pay through that.
Like a maestro, that tiger.
There you go, like a maestro, conducting an orchestra of pain.
Oh, I love it. The Orchestra of Pain. That's going to be our card game team. The Orchestra of Pain.
Symphony of Pain is the play right there.
I'm playing the Go Again tuba right on your ass. That's what we're doing all day, baby. All right, Spencer Freeman at 7. Brian Lorenz is really just taking this game by the tail like a zookeeper. Just keeping Spencer at bay. I mean, there's so much offense that was tossed at Brian's way, but there you go. But now Storm Striders are gone, so some of that, some of that burst potential, some of that surprise factor is now gone. A lot less rabbits in the hat for Brian.
Yeah, but at this point, though, you have to respect for the rest of the game the ability that you could just die at any moment. And so you can't really overextend anymore. Yes, you're not under the taxation of the Channel Lake Frigid. Okay, that's gone at least for now so that you can, just play zero-cost attacks and try to get to 14. But at any moment, if you don't have the resources to at least stop a little bit of damage, and he only has the capability of stopping 1, you just die to a lot of stuff.
First attack in a long time, frankly, for
Yes.
Spencer. He's been under the thumb of ice and frost and taxation for a long time over here. It's a 4, go again.
He's going to mark it down, drop to 10. This is the kind of thing you have to do. Your opponent extended on the beginning of their turn. You may not have a huge hand, but can you just push 10 right here and say, oops, you might have extended too early? It's a very real possibility for FAB because he can still go fetch a Phoenix Flame depending on what he has resource-wise.
You got to feel real comfortably for Brian over here, having your opponent at 4 with 1 AB and knowing that, you just absolutely squeezed. You rinsed so many cards out of their hand in the previous turn that this might not be the major potent turn that you may expect, where Brian could possibly just come back and end this game with AB1. You just got to throw, throw 2 3s at him, and there's not much that he can do.
I think Brian may be asking the question, though, did I overextend? I have 1 card left to block. I have 2 pieces of equipment that can block for 3 total. Can they just go for 10? I mean, I do still have an arsenal as well. Perhaps whatever's in that arsenal can help disrupt enough to push damage. I've already used Waning Moon. That got me here to this 4 spot on my opponent. Is there a way that I perhaps just deal with this damage, keep my arsenal, and then present lethal on their turn?
No matter what happens over here with the 2 float, you're going to get an Ember Blade and a Phoenix Flame. I think that, and that's the lethal that's basically built in. Well, that's the standard package.
Ember Blade is on the table, Phoenix Flame is on the table, and the Lava Burst is on the table. So the real question becomes, is that a zero-cost attack in the arsenal? Oh my gosh, and it is. This actually may close things out on his turn after he comes out from under all of that craziness.
What's in the arsenal for Brian? If that's something like an Aether Hail, you can pitch a blue Aether Hail and Waning Moon and tell your opponent, you have to deal with this.
Well, he's already Waning Mooned. He
did. That's true.
Off the back of the Storm Strider's Aether Ice Vein. So Waning Moon's offline. You've already used it. So he can't present lethal on this turn, and that's maybe overextending a little bit too soon, thinking that you could disrupt their turn yet again. He needs
a Blizzard or something in there to really save his skin in this case.
Blizzard would be massive.
Blizzard would basically shut this turn down, but again, that's not the end of the I mean, the Waning Moon Storm Strike seems like ages ago, but really we are still operating within that same term for that turn's framework. And Spencer has done an excellent job of keeping the pressure up. He's going to go find that other Marvel Phoenix Flame. He's going to play it. It's 2 because of the Shuko. So even worse.
Well, it's 2 because of that Spreading Flames is giving the buff.
Right,
and
right.
It's going to even buff further. I think the Shuko would fall on Lava Burst even. I think without something crazy in the arsenal, this may be too much damage for Brian to deal with, and choosing to Storm Striders early on the turn thinking you might have enough disruption, sometimes you can't disrupt enough for Phi to go 2, 4, 3, 3. Oh, it's a Channel Lake Frigid in hand, so it can block.
Did he play the E-Pot on this turn? Did Spencer play E-Pot on this turn?
He popped the E-Pot this turn.
So there you have it. That was basically part of the saving grace here, was that the E-Pot was huge.
And he is able to live and go to 1 and have an arsenal. Now that's huge. Going to 1 with an arsenal, it really comes down to whatever you draw at this point. And you've already used Storm Striders, so it's literally whatever you can draw, whatever you can defend, and then whatever you can present as sort of a crackback. And as long as your arsenal card is a blue that can in some way, shape, or form either present damage or allow you to swing Waning Moon, you might be able to get out of this one.
4-1. Spencer Freeman, Brian Lorenz. This is the 3rd quarterfinal match here at the U.S. Nationals. Flake and Armada alongside all of you who are just gripped by this incredible matchup.
It was all tempo for Brian, but then on that last turn, basically being forced from 14 to 1, It might have swung heavily. Oh, and he had an Ice Bolt, and that Ice Bolt is going to just do it. The Ice Bolt's going to represent 3 damage. The Waning Moon's going to represent 3 more damage. You can't stop all of it because